another avenue where publicly he has to express his distance from a case. But internally, we will never entirely know.
But the thing is this the type of case that Cabinet should be unaware of? Because the assumption then is if he has to ask Commissioner of Police, it seems as though Cabinet is unaware of it.
Cabinet does not necessarily have to be aware of it, but there are members of Cabinet who should be aware. For example, I still believe that the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs should have been involved, given the fact that it's an RSS plane that was used, or at least the fact that it was suggested that the RSS plane was used. The Minister of National Security, and by extension the Prime Minister, who often uses his role or title as head of the National Security Council in whatever beneficial manner he supposedly uses it in. But I think another interesting twist in this is that the Attorney General of Barbados,
yes,
well, he's actually now called for a report from the Commissioner of Police in Barbados, that is Mr. Richard Boyce, Commissioner of Police Richard Boyce. The questions that I have is it now that also Barbados was unaware, or is it also part of the narrative where we have to seem as though we're unaware? I do not think for any moment that an RSS plane or a Defense Force plane could just land in Barbados without Barbados authorities not knowing.
Well, more importantly, so is the police of one jurisdiction just going to willingly say, sure, we're going to arrest somebody for you? What are the merits of the case? Is this proven? Like, how was that exchange? Because it is, part of the ruling acknowledges that there were Barbadian police officers that were there. I believe they were the ones that actually did the arrest, so at least that
because
level of
Trinidad and
procedure was
Tobago
not...
officers can't carry out an arrest on Barbados jurisdiction.
Right, so at least that line was not crossed, but the fact of the matter is there was collaboration between the two police services. But how is it that, well, at least in one country, the AG is not aware of what happened, and in another country, the Prime Minister is having to ask the head of the National Security Council? How, it's just funny what he does not know when he does not need to know it. But you have a situation where the elected officials are asking, well, what exactly happened? Because we're not looking very good right now, and we need to be able to answer the public. And that alone, even if we take it on face value, Keaton, and we totally believe them, that's not a good look.
You see, the thing is whether or not we believe the Prime Minister for his word that he was unaware, and he's now questioning the Commissioner of Police as to exactly what happened. Whether or not we take it at face value and believe the Prime Minister, I guess it's up to the individual. I think that I do not believe that the Prime Minister would be unaware of it. I honestly don't think so.
I think the problem for the Prime Minister, and again, this is why I always say transparency works for you. Of course, in this case, there isn't much transparency, so you're trying to come after the fact and claim that you're unaware. The problem for the Prime Minister is, let's assume that's true. Then, Mr. Prime Minister, you mean to tell me that such a thing is going to happen and they're not going to tell you about it?
But then no, furthermore, because again, it's the RSS plane that Stuart Young said. So therefore, you would assume that the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs would have been aware. And by extension, the Prime Minister. You remember, all these ministers report back to the Prime Minister.
I understand. What my point is, the Prime Minister's claim, if he wants us to believe his claim to be 100% accurate, then it causes further questions that have to be asked about the fact that you have essentially lost control over an international situation.
Now, furthermore, the next part of it is whether or not this could lead to an unfortunate diplomatic incident between Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago, especially now that the Attorney General of Barbados has to get involved and is questioning, what the hell happened in my country? This entire thing has me rather, skeptical. The Minister of National Security in his press conference did not seek to address anything. I've not gotten any clarifications or answers.
I've seen one report that said that the Minister of National Security is denying involvement or knowledge about the situation in Barbados. But as far as my memory is concerned, and maybe I'm wrong, that press conference did not reference the situation in Barbados at all. So his claims that the government is not involved can't directly be attributed to that.
The other side of it, of course, is the police involvement here in TNT. The police could collaborate with the Bajan police force. But the next part is, who precisely gave these orders. I think that is crucial because the 3 officers who were on that plane to Barbados and actually brought Mr. Thomas back to Trinidad, and it's being claimed it's unlawful how he was brought back. In fact, it's even being referred to as an abduction, right? Who was the senior officer or officers who gave such orders? On what grounds did they give such orders? On what grounds was Barbados Police Force allowed to carry out this arrest? Who were the authorities that were informed? I'm repeating myself as I did 2 days ago because none of what has been said thus far by those in authority addresses any of these concerns.
The thing is, there needs to be a senior government official had to make the call. It couldn't be junior police officer that makes such a call, right? And it probably, in all honesty, should be someone who is not just in the police force, because the police, again, does not have jurisdiction outside of our own borders. So it goes back to the fact, if it is that both governments are just trying to kind of cover up their knowledge of the situation, then there won't really be much of a diplomatic fallout. However, I kind of find it hard to believe that it would be kind of silly for both governments to say, well, you know what, let's not just come out and say that everything was done correctly. We collaborated properly on what have you.
No, because there's always going to be a fall guy. Regardless of who is involved, there's always going to be a fall guy. We just don't know who that fall guy is as yet. And, you know, apart from all this, the other point is that when you take a look at this and when you take a look at the reports that are being read, though this is something that was carried out on a foreign jurisdiction, but the individual, the Trans-Tobago Police Service was involved. As much as we have media ambassadors making their rounds to every single media house to bring clarification and to also raise awareness and raise public trust and confidence in the Trans-Tobago Police Service, it is instances and operations like these that make you even more skeptical about the TTPS and their operations.
Because could you reasonably believe somebody senior, an elected official, was not involved?
So
could you reasonably be confident of that?
So that brings me to my question. And I don't know all the facts of the matter, and we may never know all the facts of the matter, especially for those who are involved. Now, it seems as though somebody had a serious disagreement with Mr. Thomas, and they were out to get Mr. Thomas. Now, that opinion could change. That's an opinion, it's not a fact. It's an opinion, and that is subject to change based off of the findings within the court systems.
Could this person you're hypothesizing about be a police officer, and maybe it is a case where a police officer went rogue and kind of pushed things too far?
That's a lot of power that this police officer has, especially if the RSS, regional security systems, were involved.
And the Minister of Energy seemed to be quite aware of the situation up until that point.
Exactly. So the individual who was aware of all these things was Stuart Young in the Parliament before Fitzgerald Hines held his press conference and denied any knowledge or government involvement. So isn't there a level of contradiction involved here somewhere? Isn't there? I mean, you kind of just reason. Isn't there some level of contradiction? So that's my question. Whether or not we believe these ministers and Prime Minister at face value, to what extent are police investigations in Trinidad and Tobago influenced or swayed by the involvement of politicians and politics?
I think this situation is ultimately very unfortunate, but and there will be more about this, folks. I'm not saying that you know, let's just not believe them and it's all bad. The problem is it's not adding up, and at the end of the day, it goes back to, I think serious questions need to be asked with regards to the policy on what is told to the public, because it seems as though, again, at least maybe they've realized it's not going to work this time, but it seems as though what they wanted to do was basically say, well, this is an ongoing investigation on a court matter, so we can't talk about it. But more and more, that's not acceptable, because the situation does not seem right, and we can't just, there's no more benefit of the doubt to give anymore, because you've asked that of the public too many times. But we have to move on. Just a quick mention at this point. But Keaton, did you know that the current murder toll is now more or less 200, estimated, potentially over 200. We are well on our way to beat the last record for the highest meter toll annually, which was set just last year. We are well on our way. I think we're already like 30 to 40 meters ahead of the pace of last year.
I think Earl Edward Christopher, the Commissioner of Police, is going to suffer from foot and mouth disease come June and by the end of the year. I mean, unless miracles do take place, and they are possible, I wouldn't doubt that they are possible, but given the fact that she wanted to reduce the number of serious crimes by June, and by the end of the year we see a major reduction, yeah, foot and mouth disease seems to be a very common thing for those in high authority, isn't it? I wish her the best. 200 murders for the year. What more can I say that I haven't said already? Tobago has had 5 murders for the year thus far.
Yeah, which is quite also on, I believe, this is just, if my memory is correct, record-breaking pace. But the thing is, the crime situation is more than just the police service. So I think, unfortunately, and it's not that she could admit it. Obviously, she can't go to a joint select committee and say, well, you know, half the problem is you're sitting asking me questions, not doing your job as legislatures and leaders of society. But the police has a big part to play as well, and yes, foot and mouth disease. Why make a promise if, you know?
No, it's not a promise, you know. I don't mind you suggesting things that my intention or my goal is to reduce serious crimes or acts of violence by, you know, this is my goal. But the moment that you put a specific time and date it, and you say by June...
To be fair, she was asked, but unlike other people who are asked those type of trap questions,
that's
she
the
did
thing.
not.
And she fell to the trap. Even though you were asked, and one could say, okay, well, she was giving an honest answer, this is her true intention. In the world that we live in today in TNT, do we commend her for her honesty? Or do we say, you made an absolutely terrible mistake for being so honest and putting a timestamp on it?
Yes, because politically it weakens her position and authority. That's the thing. There are actual practical negatives to the scenario. It's not just, oh, she kind of looks silly, but she can move on from it. No, it actually does make her job for herself now more difficult. Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, I will have to correct myself, but it's on a topic that I want to get Keaton's opinion on, because I do think it's something that he should talk about. Stay tuned for more Talking Point on WESN, your content capital.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah, hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunus Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
It is estimated that 1 in 5 children have untreated cavities, which sometimes can be more than just a dental issue.
So the thinking a lot of parents have is, so that first set of teeth that the kids have, they're going to lose it anyway.
That is the attitude, but what parents need to realize is that we have those baby teeth from age 6 to age 12, and they serve a purpose.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, is for all of us in public.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. Now, yesterday was World Press Freedom Day, and I wanted to give a little bit of good news for the day. So one of these stories was the fact that, hey, it looked as though TNT's press freedom ranking rose, but that is an error. Now, yes, it was my mistake. I should have checked the source material. I assume that the article published was correct. The article published was not correct. I do believe the article might have been mistakenly published because it was based on what happened last year previously. For the last couple of years, up until last year, we actually have been improving our press freedom ranking, except until this year, where we dropped from 25th to 30th. And I believe it's not just because the rankings changed, because other nations around us changed. I do believe that our score also changed. And generally speaking, this is something that has been highlighted or acknowledged by some of the media at World Press Freedom Day, by the organization that did the poll itself, or the list or rankings, Reporters Without Borders. And it seems to be a global trend and a global concern. For more on that, time to cue this.
Reporters today published its new annual press freedom standings. It paints a rather bleak picture of press freedom worldwide, saying that the environment for journalism is bad in 7 out of 10 countries and satisfactory in only 3 out of 10. Well, we're going to talk about it in today's Global Grid for you, and Oliver Farry from the International Affairs Desk is joining me here to talk about it. Oliver, first of all, just tell us what the main findings then are of this report.
Well, Reporters Without Borders took the unprecedented step of foregrounding the threat of the fake content industry and artificial intelligence to journalism, particularly to public trust in journalists. It also criticised the new Twitter owner, Elon Musk, and his, quote, arbitrary payment-based approach to journalism as the new owner of the social media platform. The situation overall, as you said, is bleak, but also depressingly familiar, with many of the countries anchored in the same position they have been for many years. The top-ranking countries in the index are all European, 4 of them Nordic, and Norway is top for the 7th year in a row, followed by Ireland, Denmark, Sweden, Finland and the Netherlands. There's also a surprise in the top 10, with the small Southeast Asian nation of Timor-Leste rising to number 10. This is one of the rare bright spots for press freedom in Asia, a continent where most countries are in the bottom 100. These include the 6 worst countries in descending order. They are Syria, Turkmenistan, Iran, Vietnam, China and North Korea. Some of these are also among the greatest incarcerators of journalists. China currently has 106 journalists locked up, Iran 55 and Vietnam 43. Other countries that have imprisoned quite a lot of journalists at the moment include Myanmar, Turkey and Belarus. Already this year, 6 journalists and 1 media worker worldwide have been killed doing their job. Among those, as we've seen, Earlier today is the Cameroonian radio journalist Martina Zogo, who was abducted and murdered in January.
I mean, there are a lot of high-profile cases, aren't there? I'm thinking notably of the American journalist Evan Gershkovich facing espionage charges in Russia. A lot of other cases are much less well-known, though. What are the criteria set by Reporters Without Borders?
Well, censorship and the safety of journalists are the most salient and more obvious metrics that Reporters Without Borders uses, but there are more mundane criteria too. These include editorial interference by owners, by advertisers, and also politicians, and also conflict of interest and legal and regulatory restraints such as defamation laws. Even in countries that score highly, like the ones we've mentioned, the Reporters Without Borders does show some room for improvement. France also is in 24th place. It has improved slightly in recent years, but the report judges that the mechanisms aimed at combating conflicts of interest in the media are insufficient, inadequate and outdated. There are countries that backslide as well. The United States is one that doesn't do quite as well as you might expect. The US has freedom of speech enshrined in its constitution, but a number of factors, including intimidation of journalists, particularly under the Trump administration, has seen it fall in the rankings in recent years. Reporters Without Borders has also taken an unusual step in inviting US Secretary of State Antony Blinken to the launch of its report in Washington today, which itself throws up a conflict of interest concern in itself. The US also continues to pursue the prosecution of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange for publishing classified data that was taken from the US intelligence services. Assange is certainly a divisive figure, but if he were to be extradited to the United States, it could have serious implications for the freedom of the press in democracies. And so his case is clearly not as egregious as some others around the world, but it does show that the United States itself is not completely blameless in terms of freedom of the press.
That clip courtesy our affiliates at France 24. Now, speaking to Trinidad and Tobago directly, the country profile basically of this index does highlight two incidents. One with regards to in the political context, Keaton, where certain members of the press were denied access to Prime Minister's press conference, so they highlighted that. But they also did highlight the situation where the search warrants used against members of the Express, that was struck down in court. So there's some good and some bad. Overall, they say for TNT, it maintains its good record in terms of freedom of press, even though there's still room for improvement. One thing that they do not have is with regards to the effect that private business interest has on the media. They don't seem to be somewhat aware about that. But all in all, do you think that our media operates independently enough to be the fourth estate? And does the public trust us with regards to what we say? Because there's also the fact that some media is politically biased.
So your question is, do I think whether the media acts independently or whether or not the media is independent? Because there's two different things. All right?
Right. So I guess acting independently, for the most part, probably is more important in this context.
Acting independently, sure. You have to understand that the influence that the media has in terms of public opinion is great. In fact, if the public seeks education from the media and from the press. So in order to be up to date with current affairs and to what's happening, it's truly dependent upon the media. Now, if I was to use the example of Ghana, for example, at this point in time, from what I understand, Guyanese media is highly influenced by the sitting government. It survives because of the sitting government. So dependent upon who's in power, they are always pro-government. Down here in Trinidad, we do not necessarily see that existing. I don't think the government completely influences the media, but the government still has some level of influence because of the business that it brings to the media. In fact, in many instances, media houses across TNT depend on government support, whether it be through advertising, whether or not it be through time slots, whether or not it be through special programming, whatever the case may be, because of government funding in some ways, purchasing spots, whatever it may be. If you are, the good thing is here in TNT, we are relatively independent. I say that because sometimes from a personal standpoint, the quality of the reporting tends to make me wonder whether or not journalists are afraid to delve deeper and to actually bring more facts out, or whether or not journalists are just concerned about reporting what has happened. You know, in other words,
without going further.
In other words, I don't necessarily give details. I just give you the synopsis of the story.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's interesting here in TNT. It's very cloudy. It's very murky. To a certain degree, we have independent media. You see independent investigations taking place right now. There's investigative reporting with respect to Foster Cummings. That is coming out. It's a multi-part story that is being released. But then in some instances, you wonder whether or not we are influenced by government because we need to survive because of government. And that doesn't just go for state media, by the way.
There's also the flip side. I'm not going to say that it applies to this recent story, but some of the other stories you've seen in the past that were critical of either the government or the opposition, one could argue that the media, I think there was one case where there was one issue where the media seemed quite one-sided against one side, and then by the next week there was a different issue and same media seemed quite one-sided against the other side, and I do wonder if that also comes into play there. It's not just about if you could be critical of the sitting government, but can you also be able to objectively know when to give praise because it's objectively correct to do so, things were done right, or when to, not to be balanced and not just be one-sided. Because you could be one-sided against the government.
If you were to do a survey here in TNT, everyone will say that they are objective. Everybody would suggest that they're objective. That's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, it really isn't true. I mean, we've had callers that have suggested that they are objective when every week they're calling, and you tell which, where their affiliates are or whom their preferences lie. Nothing is wrong with that. We're democratic and you are open to do so. But the thing is that when you're trying to tell yourself that you are objective and you don't even realize how biased you could be, then who are the fools? And that's in the same way that's applicable to the media here in TNT. What I've also witnessed is that you have, because of the influence of social media as well, freedom of expression exists because social media allows for it now to a certain extent. But it also has allowed for greater bias to be involved. So social media has obviously its benefits, but it also has its cons. You have some individuals who are suddenly taking up the role of journalists, and I keep pointing out this particular page is called News Source. They've taken up the roles of journalists, being financed by the government, but clearly it's totally biased. So I think it really, at the end of the day, objectivity here in TNT, the media houses I think need to be a bit more objective. They are scared because of financing. For example, I've heard rumors that certain media houses or certain journalists or reporters from media houses are no longer allowed at government press conferences. I've heard that.
We've heard other people have been muzzled at times to stop criticizing the government.
And that was instructions. And then there are some journalists who are encouraged to come to press conferences because of their affiliations or their stance. So they always ask pro-government questions.
Or rather soft questions.
Exactly. So, I think we have a fairly good balance and a fairly good mix, but I also believe that there is great room for improvement, whether it be through independence and independent reporting and objectivity. But I also think, and I've always been strong in this particular opinion, the quality of our reporting and the quality of journalism needs to improve here in TNT.
Just overall?
Overall, yeah.
Overall. There might be some individuals who, for a story here or there, shining bright examples of excellence. Then there's also the fact that one could ask, will state media truthfully report on what's going on with any sort of government scandal, especially ones that are actually being played out in certain official capacities like the courts?
I've seen, so coming from state media, and particularly one media house that's located on Maraval Road, of which we all are aware of, sometimes I wonder, how in the world did this individual get this job? How in the world were they hired? In fact, I'm even curious to know, I wonder how much are even being paid for this mediocrity. We don't even set high standards for ourselves in terms of reporting, in terms of journalism, in terms of even the quality of production coming from state media. And the thing is, I mean, I sometimes listen to the news and sometimes to the reports, and I'm just here like, crikey, really? You know, but even in instances where you have government ministers or politicians or state officials or officials in high-ranking places having a preference to go to state media, because it's simple. State media is not going to put me on the spot. Mm-hmm. State media is not going to ask me the questions that need to be asked. I'm going to just go there and push my political campaign and political propaganda. So, I mean, it's obvious, okay? It's state media, let's not get me wrong. But at the same time, shouldn't it also be kind of setting an example of impartiality?
Or it should just declare itself for what it is and not try to act as an independent media house. So it is what it is. Just quick note, you mentioned Guyana and its issues with media and government intimidation. Well, the Reporters Without Borders basically pointed out that journalists who oppose authorities face intimidation. They dropped from 34 to 60 in the rankings over the last year. Folks,
imagine that.
Who would have thought that intimidating reporters might make you look bad? Let's take a break here. Talking Point. When we return, we're going to get into one of the big cases that has come out in the latter part of the week with our usual Thursday contributors. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital. Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The artists you'll meet. The sounds will astonish you. Superb voices, new artists, simply refreshing. Celebrate amazing. May 27th, North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds Blanchishes. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunus Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to now speak with Opposition Senator Jyanti Lakshmi-Dayal about a case that it's been, you know, we've spoken, I believe, to the Senator about this once before last year, or at least we were trying to just before things took a turn with regards to lawsuits and et cetera. However, for such a old story, I do believe that the developments now have taken a much more interesting turn with regards to what's been revealed, and a concerning one with regards to the conflict of interest that seems to be existing in the very same people who are there to prevent things like this from happening. For more on this, of course, we have Opposition Senator Jyanti Lakshmi-Dayal with us every Thursday. Good morning, Senator.
Hi, good morning. Thanks again for having me. Sorry about the lack of video this morning.
It's fine. We're just happy to have you here. Of course, telecommunication deficiencies in TNT are something that our viewers and all are very well aware about. We even had somebody come in just to complain about his telecom provider.
Don't get me started.
Don't get Keaton started. But Senator, I do believe this case, this situation is quite old. You've been speaking about this for quite some time, but if my memory serves correct, there is some new, somewhat of a revelation that, well, the person who's supposed to be overseeing this situation or situations like these, they are technically under the purview of the ministry of which Foster Cummings is the sitting minister, which begs the question, what's going on?
Yeah, so that's correct. So I think most people would have seen the Mark Bassant story that's been running in the news. And, you know, it deals with a lot of the things. It has some further information, but it deals with the issue that I raised last year about monies being sent from state enterprises directly to the credit union and in the name of the minister. The explanation proffered at that time was that a personal loan was taken by the minister, who's a member of the credit union, but it was used to facilitate business operations from family businesses, and those businesses were the recipients of state contracts, so that they assigned the contracts to the credit union. So lots of questions coming out of that. Was there a breach of the credit union rules? Now, Mark Bassant's story focused a lot on the credit rating and the credit history of the minister, and whether or not it was, you know, courtesies were extended to him without all of the necessary approvals, and, you know, the credit union itself sort of extended credit to him that they would not normally extend to other regular members. Certainly, I think people are questioning now whether a bank would take on such a risk given the history of the particular member and so on. And all of this boils down to a couple of critical things. One thing that I mentioned, and I think is carried in today's Guardian, is the issue that the Commissioner for Cooperative Development, who is the supervisor, the regulator, the person who has to have oversight of credit unions, sits within the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service. Previously, that office was located in the Ministry of Labour, and it was moved and it was placed directly under the purview of Minister Cummings. So how can we really expect, with all the issues being raised, how can we really expect this person to exercise their function properly and independently when the line minister that they are sort of reporting to and under their control of is in fact the said person who is at the center of this controversy? So as I said, if everything that's being said about Minister Cummings, the Prime Minister doesn't wish to remove him from the cabinet, I would say at a minimum, the Commissioner for Cooperative Development and that portfolio should be relocated to another ministry. And certainly, I believe that that person needs to start working together with the ACIB, who are clearly on the case from everything that's been reported, and really look at what is taking place at this credit union, and because that will certainly may assist the police in their investigations. It may expose wrongdoing by persons, other than the minister. And I think it will, most importantly, give some level of comfort to the other members who are now seeing the name of their financial institution splashed up on front pages. So I think Sunday front page and other days, big spreads talking about the operations of this credit union, which must be a cause of concern for citizens who are a member of this. I think they are one of the larger credit unions in the country.
I'm very confused. First of all, why does the board that oversees credit unions fall under the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service? Why is this
I don't know. I don't know, but remember at one point the Ministry of Labour was called the Ministry of Labour and Cooperative Development, so we had that located there, and then it was relocated. There's a reassignment of portfolios from time to time, different things, because you have overlap and you have the renaming of ministries and so on. We had, for example, community development and culture. Then now we have tourism, culture, and the arts. So culture has moved from one area to the next, and so they, and it causes a lot of I think unnecessary headache. But
according to Foster Cummins, he consulted with his attorney at law, Ramesh Lawrence Murad, senior counsel. And the senior counsel advised Foster Cummins that he has not in any way contravened any of the laws here in TNT. So therefore, is it that there's no repercussions for this, and by extension, it seems as though the credit union themselves have not done anything wrong?
Well, I wouldn't go that far, because at the end of the day, what the credit union has done. Okay, so something that most people probably don't know is that a company cannot be a member of a credit union. So an individual can be a member, or a smaller credit union can be a member of a cooperative. So, for example, a very small credit union can join TechU, they could join Venture, they could join one of those bigger ones, right, and become members. What they have done is that they are extending loans to be used by companies to personal members. Not treating with separate like separate legal personality and those kind of things. That is clearly a workaround of a situation. Is it illegal and a breach of the credit union rules? That is something that, again, the commissioner has to determine. To say that nothing was done that is illegal, it ignores certain things and certain rules we have in place, like the financial obligations regulations that deal with the commingling of funds. When Minister Cummings gave his explanation last year, when I made the MTS checks public, he said that it was entirely proceeds of contracts awarded to, I think it was Rivulet Investments, that was the company, one of his family companies, and it was to pay back this loan that he had taken. Yesterday in the news, Mark Bassant reported that one of the checks paid to another company by HDC, part of the proceeds went to the loan payments and the rest of it was deposited in his personal share account. That is evidence of commingling of funds, and it could be evidence of other offenses. Money laundering, for example, where an individual is building personal wealth, perhaps undeclared wealth, and the proceeds of a company. And at the end of the day, it is a contract awarded by a state enterprise to a company closely linked to a minister. And if the minister is being personally enriched by it, there are obviously going to be offenses committed there.
Well, Senator, there's also the fact that, because I saw your presentation yesterday, you also spoke about the fact that these companies that are linked to the Minister Cummings, there seemed to have been something of like musical chairs being played with regards to which ones were operating, which ones were operating out of certain offices.
Yeah, so we know of 3 companies officially that belong, and where Minister Cummings and his family, his immediate family, are the named directors and so on. He held positions in those companies. Those companies are Rivulet Investments, Pical Services, and Cummings and Associates. All right. There, in the special branch report, which I also made public, there was mention made of another company, and I've been receiving information about the names of other companies as well, which I have to do further research, and I have to utilize FOIA to get this information. That company that was mentioned in the special branch report, when I started investigating and I looked at the company records, I started sending FYIs to state companies, I realized that they were formed immediately about 2 months after the PNM took office in 2015. The person forming that company, incorporating the company, who's the director, had previously worked at Cummings and Associates since 2006. So between 2006 and 2017, they were named as a company secretary. The address being used by that company is the same as Cummings and Associates. It is also in the same building that I think Pical or Rivulet was previously located in. They utilize the same accountant to file all of their company documents. And that company, having been formed in 2015, there was no sort of records in the company's registry about financing or share capital or anything. Until 2020, they had issued share capital. But from formation time to now, they've earned $19 million from Udicott. And that's just one state enterprise that I'm aware of. I have about 20-something freedom of information requests going out to different enterprises to find out more about them. But they apply to become...
Let me just ask you... If you were, I know that you had raised issues before in the public with respect to Foster Cummings and his businesses. You've gone into detail here. But if you knew about all these things before Mark Bassan's report came out, shouldn't this have been raised for public awareness sooner?
Well, some of these things are, as I said, it's incoming, 1. 2, it is also part of my defense because he has sued me for defamation. There was a period of time where he had applied for an injunction against me to try to stop me from speaking on these issues. The injunction was refused. Then there was an appeal. He subsequently, I suppose, on the advice of his new attorney, abandoned that appeal. And as I said, the information is incoming. It has to be checked. It has to be verified. So I cannot say at this point in time, and that's why his statement is very, I suppose cautious that he's been advised that he hasn't broken any laws. Now, that's not for me to determine what laws he has broken, and it's not as well, I think, for his attorney to say what laws he has broken. I think it is for the police to investigate. So as information comes in, I mentioned yesterday in the press conference that I have an FYI to the THA as well about contracts. It's not necessarily that laws are being broken, but it's a question of whether or not rules at state enterprises are being flexed and are being, becoming very flexible, whether people are being given accommodations, and about the amount of work being awarded to companies linked to a minister, whether or not there is. And this is why I took Udicott to court, because what the whole thing about this company that I'm speaking about that is closely linked to him is that I asked Udicott to disclose the checks, and they refused, because I also wanted to know whether or not these checks were going to a particular financial institution or whether it was being paid directly to Clyden. And I've sued for that as well. So there's a lot of pending litigation. There's pending freedom of information requests outstanding. And so the picture, I would say, is an emerging one. But as information comes to light and I feel that it is prudent for me to share, I make every effort to share it. Hence the reason for the opposition's press conference yesterday.
Well, I do like to thank you for that, because I literally just in the last segment lamented the fact or not the last segment, maybe the segment before, of situations where people tend to hide behind the fact, well, it's in the court, so I can't speak about it. But the problem is we've already reached the point where public trust, I think, is starting to wane sufficiently that I don't know if it's good enough anymore to just, well, we'll wait and see, because we're tired of waiting and seeing. And to be fair, this case, this situation seems to have been in the public spotlight to various degrees for quite some time. Go ahead, Senator.
No, yeah, and that's the political aspect of it is this. This is not the first set of questions being raised around a minister. Questions were raised before about the occupation of lands not belonging to the minister but to HDC. Questions were raised yesterday about the manner in which HDC permits the people closely affiliated to the minister to acquire houses from persons or lands previously assigned to other people. Questions have been raised about the dealings and contracts being awarded to these companies. And so the thing that the UNC and the opposition has been pushing is that there are just too many questions being raised about this particular minister. So much so that to trigger the intelligence arm of the TTPS to write a report to the special branch. So much so that to trigger the Anti-Corruption Investigation Bureau to launch an investigation to approach the court for orders to get into the bank accounts and so on of these companies, and yet still this minister is being allowed to sit in the cabinet. And that, to me, is what the real issue is. The issue here is that the Prime Minister and the PNM they refuse to even remove or to limit the responsibility of this person. He is the General Secretary of the PNM. It's a very powerful position, and he's allowed to continue in office whilst all these questions are being raised. And one has to understand the way things work in this country when an investigation is ongoing, and yet you have a person sitting in the cabinet exercising a certain amount of power. Position in government equals power.
Senator,
and that to me is the worrying part.
I'm sorry, I have to cut you there. I mean, it is a very ethical question. They are very important ethical question that you bring up.
It is.
Technically, he's
it's a
innocent.
Question about ethics, and it's a question about good governance. That's what the question.
He is innocent until proven guilty, but to what extent now does that apply in situations where your actions could affect the lives of multiple hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of people in society? But we have to save that for another time. We have to break for news, but I'd like to thank you for joining us to share your contribution on this quite important story.
Thank you for having me again. We'll chat again next week.
Yes.
Take care.
Looking forward to it. Take care. Folks, we break for news on the hour on WSN. When we return, we'll open up the phone lines. We'll, of course, ask the question of the day. Hear from you, the viewers. What do you think about this and anything else that you might find concerning with regards to our society right now? But stay tuned. News on the hour is next.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. THA Chief Secretary stands by statements for central government to stay out of Tobago's business. Wife of murdered Tobago man puzzled by his murder. Beneficiaries receive deeds to residential lots from minister. Regionally, Antigua recruiting more medical professionals from Cuba. And internationally, missing Australian fisherman's body found in crocodile. Now for the details. THA Chief Secretary Fali Augustine is calling on central government to stay out of Tobago's affairs. Speaking on Tobago Updates, Augustine said there are several issues that should get the attention of the Prime Minister and central government rather than getting in Tobago's business.
Ever so often, we have to remind the Prime Minister and the central government what their business is and get them in line, because if you don't, you will have situations where the little bits of autonomy that we do have, we will not enjoy them, because those are the ones they will seek to mess with while ignoring what their business really is.
The Chief Secretary stands by its comments toward the Prime Minister and denies that he was disrespectful.
In my world, respect must be a two-way street, and if sometimes if you don't trade your lamb-like character for a lion, people will walk all over you. And what I see is a great deal of hypocrisy pervading the space.
The latest killing in Tobago has left her wife reeling from heartbreak. She lamented the moment her husband's life was snuffed out, 68-year-old Edward Eastman of Golden Lane, Tobago, was shot and killed on Wednesday by a man who called out to him. This is the 5th murder to be recorded in Tobago for the year thus far.
I don't know who really do this, but they killed my husband. I just don't know how to put it, to put these pieces together. A blade tried to defend himself. So he said, who? By the door, please answer. So I say who you are, say who you are, and the person not. And the person start to fire a shot from that side of the louvers. And when I see the shot, when I look so, I really see somebody, a small prayer person with a black hoodie, and they start to shoot. He take up the fan and think to pelt the people, you know, to see, well, whatever. That didn't stop them. They fire non-stop bullet on the man, and the man slum on me.
Housing Minister Camille Robinson-Regis presented deeds of lease to deserving beneficiaries under the government-aided self-help housing program. A total of 50 families received 30-year leases with an option to renew for residential lots in Chaguanas and Karapichaima. Additionally, program beneficiaries have access to low interest rates 2% to 5% from the Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Finance Company Limited, building plans from the LSA, as well as assistance and guidance to meet statutory building requirements. On to regional developments now. Antigua and Barbuda Health Minister Molwyn Joseph says that in an effort to boost the numbers at the Sir Lester Bird Medical Center, close to a dozen medical professionals will be sourced from Cuba. Joseph said that talks are ongoing with the Cuban government. His statement followed a disruption in healthcare services at the hospital last Tuesday and Wednesday. In international news now, the remains of an Australian man who vanished while fishing with friends have been found inside a crocodile. Kevin Darmody was last seen at Kennedy's Bend, a well-known saltwater crocodile habitat in a remote part of northern Queensland on Saturday. After a 2-day search of the area, police euthanized 2 large crocodiles and found human body parts. Police said it was a tragic ending for Mr. Darmody. A formal identification process will be carried out. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah, hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Chaguanas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
Welcome back to Talk About, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, today we've hit quite a few important stories. The murder rate is at or over 200. The Prime Minister is saying that he has questions for the Commissioner of Police. The opposition is asking further questions about the Minister of Youth Development. And if you have any other topic that you would like to speak of, that also would be valid. However, with regards to what we said today, we do have a question of the day. Well,
that was good.
We do have a question today, though, folks. We might not have the bumper, but we do have the question. And the question is, do you think politicians and politics influences or sways police investigations. Do you think politicians and or politics influences or sways police investigations? Because in two of our stories today, we see potentially politics might have swayed the Brent Thomas situation in some capacity. We're not sure at the end of the day, so we could only speculate, but it might have happened. And ironically, in the other story, we're seeing where politics has not necessarily yet swayed the situation, but perhaps it is, we just can't necessarily see it yet. With regards to Minister Cummings, and yes, okay, the TTPS might have started to look into the situation. To what extent, however, will the political circus around it potentially derail the actual, process of justice?
Don't answer the question.
Well, there are examples going both ways, so I would like to get the general consensus now from the viewer.
Let's open up the phone lines. We could have the numbers on the screen so you, the viewer, can have the opportunity to call in and join us on the program. But I think it's actually an interesting question from the aspect that it also tells us about public opinion about the capacity of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to actually operate independently or effectively as a police service should.
Or at the very least, does the public perceive that to be the case? Because it doesn't have to be reality, but the perception is enough. The loss of confidence, the loss of trust, right? All of a sudden it makes the situation difficult. It makes the situation for investigations. That's one of the issues with regards to high murder rate. In order to get proper evidence, they need cooperation of eyewitnesses. If we don't have it, because there's a lack of trust in the police service, that's the negative consequence of the politics getting involved into the police. So, call in, let us know what you have to think.
628-4578 or 623-9376. So those are the telephone numbers. You can share your thoughts and opinions with us this morning, ladies and gentlemen. But in the meantime, I'd like to raise another issue that is very scary. What's taking place in schools it's what is going on with people, these children coming to school brandishing cutlasses, and I keep asking, given the current state of our school system, given the fact that how we've had an increase in school violence, and these videos have raised more awareness, something of which these institutions are not very happy about, we need to have more police checks at the schools. Sometimes we need to actually treat these schools at boot camps. Your students need to be searched before entering the compound.
And, well, this is something where, look, I don't know how much more you could ask the police to treat with these situations when things break down at the edges of society, because this is not their job. Their job is not to have a constant police presence just to keep students in line.
But it doesn't.
Where else are we going to, are breakdowns like this going to happen where the police are going to be stretched thinner and thinner?
It doesn't have to be the police to conduct these searches at the entrance of school. We have security guards at every school. Security guards should be given the powers. That should be one of their responsibilities, because security guards have a lot to do. But rather than sit at guard booths as students enter, Anyway, call on the line with us from Petty Valley. Good morning. Hello, good morning. All right, okay.
Wait, no, he's there, I think he just doesn't have...
His volume is high.
Good morning, Sean.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The Prime Minister came out in a statement and said he had no knowledge of the incident in Barbados, and he is looking for a report from the Commissioner of Police. Now, what I see you all saying this morning is, if you all want to put the Prime Minister into this, hear what would have to happen if the Prime Minister, if you want to implement him into this. The Prime Minister will have to go over the Commissioner of Police, call the 3 special branch officers, tell them to go to Barbados, call Barbados Commissioner of Police, or the Minister for National Security is Mayor Motley, and tell them that he's sending 3 officers to pick up the guy in Barbados. That was the Prime Minister have to do if you all want to put the Prime Minister into this.
Caller, that's not...
No, just now.
It doesn't have to go...
Just now, God. 2, you all, Sean, keep saying this morning, the Prime Minister was to know about this. And he's the head of national security. He had to know about this. For the Prime Minister to know about this, so you telling me when the police is going to arrest someone or warrant for someone or do the police business, they'll have to call the Prime Minister and tell him what they're doing in police business. Now, if they do that, I could imagine hearing Sean saying the Prime Minister is putting his foot in independent business and he's a dictator, and the same thing like the merits list, what you all said he do with the merits list when screaming the merits list, you will say that if the police is calling the Prime Minister to tell him what they're going to do in police business. That is my point this morning. I'll listen off here.
Okay.
Thank you.
The long and short is the police don't have the right to leave the country under any capacity. And that would need to be set up by someone above the police, because the police has no jurisdiction in Barbados.
No, I don't know about that, and I can't comment too much on that. It is dependent upon the Commissioner of Police, but one of the bigger factors here as well is the fact that an RSS plane was used.
Yes.
So
that also is not within the purview of the Commissioner of Police.
So, caller from Percy Valley, you've raised a point, and it's good that you've actually opened up a different view or a different opinion. But Percy Valley, if we are to be very honest and realistic with each other, I mean, I think it sounds as though you're trying to sway away from all possibilities, because there is a high chance, and we've acknowledged it, that the Prime Minister genuinely wasn't aware, or no members of Cabinet were aware. But given the context of the details that we know thus far, it is highly unlikely. So just understand how politics and politicians have power and influence.
Just quick. There's a difference between giving approval and being made aware, right? As someone who's technically in charge of the National Security Council, when an international police operation is going on, I would like to think that he would then tell the Commissioner, if he did not do so before the incident, after the incident, you cannot be doing these things, and I am unaware of it.
And by the way, to use the example that every time the police is going to arrest somebody, they have to make the Prime Minister aware, in this case, that was a very unfortunate example that you tried to use in your argument this morning. You're better than that, Percy Valley. But again, that's your opinion.
We have a caller from
St. James. Good morning. Hello, good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Beautiful program again. I just called to make just a brief comment. And I want to say that we must remember that the Prime Minister came on TV and he said, I decided to give Gary Griffith a chance. I decided that, right? So he had a great influence in spite of all what they try to hide about him being influential in the police business. And I also want to say, I now realize, I mean, you know, gentlemen, you all know about this. You know, people talk and you hear things they don't say. Well, I now understand why the Prime Minister was coming down on special branch several weeks ago, because he was aware of certain investigations being taken place on his ministers, right? And I mean, he has proven more and more and more everything the past Patrick Manning has said about him in terms of his attitude and everything. So that's my statement for the day. You all have a good day.
Thank you very much, Kolo.
Now, technically speaking, the Prime Minister does have a right to have an opinion and with regards to the Commissioner, because the process does go through him at some point. It's just that in the last situation, the point of which he involved himself was where we had the debate. But to some extent, I understand your point, and I don't fault you for it.
The Prime Minister has every right to have an opinion. It is just that when your personal opinion starts to have greater influence over what should be your professional opinion or professional judgment, that is where we have issues. So if you cannot split your personal opinion or your personal ideals or ideologies versus what you should do in your professional capacity, then Unfortunately, it could lead to some very terrible mishaps.
I understand what you're saying, but to some extent, that is not so easy, and this is why voters now need to be aware of the personalities that they vote for. And if you're fine with it, then that's fine as well. Just as long as people don't complain about it after the fact. Oh, this is not what I signed up for.
It is not.
Voters need to be aware of what they're getting themselves
into. It may
into.
not necessarily be easy, right? But I have not seen even an ounce of effort for that to happen. All right? We have a caller on the line with us from Chigodas. Good morning, caller.
Morning, everyone. I'm Morning City Valley.
Good morning.
As a young 23-year-old university student, the media seems biased and selective of its reporting, and there seems to be a regurgitation of news from major stations, and there's still not much news companies in 2023 in Trinidad and Tobago. One of the richest country in the Americas, Trinidad and Tobago, the Americas of the Caribbean. Imagine, people seriously rely on Ian Allen for news. Is that the standard? Not to bash Mr. Allen, who was a rejected PNM and UNC candidate. But should he really be the standard? Also, with so much unreputable pages, it is so easy to spread fake and old news. The opposition banging Kamala open Cuba Hospital. I could have sworn it was yesterday, when in reality, I was still in secondary school. And also, a laptop program, which I was a recipient of. Yes, I got a Kamala laptop. I can say that program was massively flawed. A waste of time. Most of my peers who had laptops already had used the Kamala laptops for nothing productive. Kudos to Dr. Rowley for reinventing the school computer program, but that's continuing. The media seems selective in its outrage, keeping trending, and remind us about Jack Warner and SIS, not Kizel Jackson and Gary Griffith basically toting over being commissioner while all of a sudden wanted to be prime minister. And by the way, Mr. Griffith, Mrs. Erla has far outshone you in her first couple months versus your first couple months. Never forget, under Gary Griffith, Ashanti Rai and Andrea Barrett, Gary, you really want to offer something? The Prime Minister right have no good reason, and I quote, no good reason to meet you, now a private citizen, or I would say, a sour, angry old man. And also one last thing. Last Friday, I believe Munidal called someone a vagrant in the parliament, and I believe it was directed to Hines. Wow. Very appealing. Great example for cheering, eh? I call for the removal of Munilal by the opposition leader, and if not, it begs the question, what does Munilal have over Bisasa? But then, what could you really expect from the parliament with wet behind the ears members like Saddam?
I think that last part was unnecessary. Please be very careful. But for a 23-year-old university student, you sound very much seasoned. So, interesting perspectives. Yes.
I will just say this. I understand that it looks like sometimes the commentary and criticism are one-sided, and we try to remind viewers every now and then, government sets policy, government makes decisions. So there is more important things to speak about that the government does, the majority party does, as opposed to the opposition party or other people who, depending on how they communicate and their demeanor and their behavior, essentially, you don't necessarily want to continue to highlight certain things, like with what happened between Watson Duke and Kizel Jackson. Ultimately, that's a personal thing between them. We've spoken about what it might mean to Mr. Duke's character. We don't necessarily want to keep highlighting that. That's not something that's sufficiently important or necessary or constructive to highlight. But with regards to the government, because they are active with setting policy, we have to highlight what it is. Those things are important.
If I may, as I was saying before you went on that, well, you know what? Now I can't say anything. Good morning, caller from San Fernando. Hello, good morning. San Fernando, are you with us?
I think they're paying attention to the television. That's why, folks, if you're calling in, you still need to pay attention to your phones, because when we have the opportunity, we might come straight to you. San Fernando, are you there?
All right, okay.
The floor is yours.
Caller from San Fernando, please call back in. Kindly mute your televisions before calling in. I would agree with you that we shouldn't actually focus on it to expand the conversation more than it really deserves the attention. But I would disagree with you that even though government sets policy, that is where all the focus should be. I've always said that an opposition, regardless of who it may be, whether or not in the halls of parliament or another political party who has aspirations, if they have an opinion, if they've actually brought forward alternatives or solutions, we should actually focus on that as well. But we can also give them constructive criticism. So whether or not you see it, because the reporting on the government is so strong as compared to the opposition, I will say at times, I agree with you on that. But you also have to understand that there should be focus on the opposition as well. A strong opposition benefits both governance in TNT and the citizens of TNT. And I like your pick, by the way, because if people are relying on certain individuals who just want to be influencers or become influencers because we've put them there as news sources, we've really reached a state of crisis here in TNT.
I just like to point out, we did criticize the stand your ground proposal by the opposition leader well before the rest of the media.
The opposition not even chief whip, opposition member of parliament, Raul Mulina's comments, I disagree with that. That's distasteful, that's nasty, it's vile, it shouldn't be allowed. And the opposition should not criticize the government when the government makes such statements, because you're a hypocrite if you're only practicing what you preach against. Both sides, and I can't trust this, both sides need to do better in terms of their decorum and their commentary, setting a very bad example.
I'll have more to say about that after, but we have a caller from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning.
Is it a connection issue? Caller, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm not hearing you. No.
There we go. Good morning, caller.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Please, you know, this case, I look at it in a wider sense, where you have always heard about these allegations of state employees and parliamentarians being enriched from the state. And this is just a tip of the iceberg, I can assure you. And this is why remember we were talking about constitutional reform. These are the things that are so needed constitutional reform needed to stop these things, because this is just a tip of the iceberg, you know, gentlemen. There have been many allegations of these things, and other people who have given from state agencies, for instance, FCB, where debt forgiveness was given to politicians. Lenny Seat was given a $25 million debt forgiveness by Prime Minister Manning, and these type of things. And we, the citizens, this is our money that they play monopoly with. And this is things that need to stop. And I am so glad that it is being highlighted. People might say that witch hunt and all that type of thing, but we need to see what they do. And this is just a snippet of what they are doing. And I hope the public opens their eyes, you know. People have to start to open their eyes to make decisions when that time comes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
I just find it interesting that I'm pretty sure there would have been certain members within the PNM right now who were on the front lines basically saying things like Sunway and Calder Heart way back when, with regards to not necessarily the same scenario, but a similar enough scenario. You know, who's these people on the board of directors, and is this to enrich yourself, and what's going on here? You know, who's getting which money, where the money going, etc., etc., etc. So that's all I'm saying. Let's be consistent, because yes, there are also similar allegations can be made with regards to the People's Partnership.
All right, we actually have to close the phone lines because of the time. We're going to take this last caller, and caller, I'm asking to be very quick because we're more or less out of time. Good morning, caller from San Juan.
A very good morning to you, Keaton, and a very good morning to Sean Michael. I just called to highlight one issue today. Today, the 4th of May, will signal 9 years since the murder of prominent attorney Dana Sita-Hall. And from what I understand, we have persons, I shouldn't use the word men, but I should say persons who have been charged with this lady's murder. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why up to this day, after 9 years that this dastardly act was committed against this goodly lady, that the Director of Public Prosecutions, the DPP's office, and the police, I mean, they say they cannot piece together facts and evidence to make a prima facie case against the accused. I mean, what does he keep back? Why is justice being delayed in such a manner? Is the DPP not accountable to anybody? I mean, this thing is, I don't know what word to describe this thing. This lady has been assassinated 9 years ago. And her family, I mean, they must be grieved. It pains them every single day. Why can't people be brought to court to face justice?
A very good point, caller.
Innocence or guilt declared one way or the other. That is my contribution for today. Thank you. I'll listen to your comments.
Thank you, caller. We were so far out of time. But Karen did lament on it yesterday. She's someone who knows the knew Dana Cedar pretty personally. It is a significant loss to our nation, not just for the loss of the person, but what her death and how she was murdered, what it means to us.
Unfortunately, we don't have much more time to comment on that, so I'll just close this show. Thank you to all our callers, and thank you to Senator Jayantha Lakshmi for joining us this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Talking Point. That's Sean Michael Small. I'm Keaton Shaw. Remember, today is a good day to have a good day, and should things go good, hopefully they do, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah, hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunas Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
The perfect mix of news, current affairs, talk, debate, mature discussions, comedy and sports. Only at WESN, the content capital.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinidadians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
This May, the spectacular event you've been waiting for is coming. May 27th, celebrate amazing North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival grounds, Blashy shares. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunus Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.
It is estimated that 1 in 5 children have untreated cavities, which sometimes can be more than just a dental issue.
So the thinking a lot of parents have is, so that first set of teeth that the kids have, they're going to lose it anyway.
Actually, that is the attitude, but what parents need to realize is that we have those baby teeth from age 6 to age 12, and they serve a purpose.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, is for all of us in public.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
I'm Keaton Shaw, and we are WESN, the Content Capital.
We are
WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, We Entertainment, Sports, and News. WESN, available on Greendot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, Bmobile 107, Digicel 21, ICNTT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Safe and sound, that's how we'll get you to the biggest North Coast Jazz ever. No hassle and no worries. Park your ride at the Queen's Park Savannah. Hop on board a safe and secure shuttle with your $100 return fee, and that's it. Service begins at 10 a.m. through 1 p.m. and returns from festival grounds from 7 p.m. Park and ride, a $100 return fee, first come, first go shuttle service to festival grounds Blashy shares. No hassle and no worries. North Coast Jazz, May 27th. Born here, played here. Tickets available at Crosby's, Extra Foods Endeavour, Shogunus Main Road, Sangre Grande, Arima, Grand Bazaar, Mart's Liquor Mart, Diego Martin, Kenny's Sports Outlets, Athletes by the Park, and WESN.